Very fine. I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The Apollo 11 mission is one of the most important achievements in American history, which at the time was a tremendous undertaking. Not only was it a landmark achievement in space exploration, but it also broke barriers in history by helping the U.S. overcome the Soviet Union during the famed space race and ultimately the entire Cold War. Prior to the Apollo 11 mission, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were steeped in conflict. The Cold War tensions that prevailed throughout the 20th century manifested themselves in the armament of both the US and the Soviet Union with nuclear warheads. Many proxy wars in Asia over the fight to spread and stop communism ensued, and one example of these is the Cuban Missile Crisis, in which tensions escalated between the US and Soviet Union over the Soviets' allocation of nukes to Cuba. The Bay of Pigs crisis also escalated the tensions of the Cold War prior to the Apollo 11 mission, as JFK's invasion revealed the US's aggressive attitude towards the spread of communism throughout the 20th century. These conflicts built to greater and greater heights until they were taken to space and culminated in the space race. Russia landed the first blow by successfully getting a man into space for the first time. This had never been done before in history, and the US surely felt the effects of the stunning attack. In retaliation, the US spent the next several years testing and failing numerous Apollo missions, including Apollo 8 and Apollo 10. Both of these missions were designed to test the waters, so to speak, to ensure that the Apollo 11 mission would be a successful one. After years of testing, the US finally launched the Apollo 11 shuttle, hurtling towards the moon on July 16, 1969.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Okay, we got a roll program.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts.
Once the US landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong placed the famous US flag as a symbolic reminder that we had won the space race. By symbolically placing the flag on the moon, the US reversed some of the prior losses to the moon landing and allowed the US to portray the space race as a victory. Because of these devastating losses during the Cold War and early space race, the Apollo 11 success is given an even greater weight and effect on the US's victory and eventual turnaround at the end of the Cold War. Had the US previously been winning the Cold War, the moon landing would not have had the same impact it did, and would not be considered a barrier-breaking achievement. However, given the context of the US's prior losses to the moon landing, then its massive barrier-breaking effect can be seen. Additionally, the Apollo 11 missions were on a far greater scope than any prior Soviet mission had ever been, and cemented it as a barrier-breaking moment in American history. The US required tons of energy to get their cruiser to the moon, not to mention the difficulty of landing the lunar module. Contrastly, the Soviets had only previously gotten men and animals into space, but had never had to land a module. Additionally, the US needed to design a rover that could help the astronauts as they navigated the moon, whereas the Soviets, in any previous exploits, had not had to design anything to do this. While some may diminish the Apollo 11's mission effects due to its immense costs, they are well justified when compared to the previous exploits of the Soviets, which, while are lower in cost, are also smaller in scale. The Apollo 11 missions had greater media coverage than the Soviet missions, and having greater publicity allowed the US to assert itself from a popularity standpoint over the Soviet Union. The initial moon landing had over 20 million viewers tuning in from around the world, which is a tremendous amount of people considering TVs had only recently been invented. The wide reception that the moon landing received by the world helped the US in popularity over the Soviets, which when combined from a technological standpoint as well, goes to show how pivotal the moon landing really was in helping the US overcome the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The tremendous influence that the Apollo 11 mission had around the world allowed the US to overturn its previously unfavorable view earlier in the Cold War. Going back to conflicts such as the Vietnam War, as well as the Bay of Pigs crisis, it can be seen that the US's citizens, as well as ones globally, do not appreciate the US's antics. However, because of the moon landing, millions from around the world saw how the US was dedicated to progress and prosperity. This gave the US a huge boost in popularity over the Soviet Union, as they as well had been very unpopular due to these same conflicts. The popularity reveals how barrier-breaking the moon landing really was from a social standpoint in overcoming the Soviet Union. Overall, people today may not remember just what the Apollo 11 mission really was or how it happened. However, it's undeniable that at its time, the Apollo 11 mission was an extremely important aspect of the space race as well as the Cold War as a whole, that had effects that branched far and wide into media, the economy, and the public opinion throughout the 20th century. Its long-lasting effects as well as its immense presence at its time cements the moon landing as one of the most barrier-breaking moments in American history.